Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for today's London Java Community Lightning Talks. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Abby and I work with Barry, who is the founder of the LJC. He's just waving at you there. The LJC is just one of the communities which is run by RecWorks. We are a tech recruitment company with a huge difference. As a company, we believe that recruitment really can be a force for good in the industry beyond just placing people in jobs. We have a particular focus on learning, mentoring, and personal development. From our perspective, if people want to learn and others want to teach or share their knowledge, we are more than happy to connect you through our communities and events. We see this as giving back to those we've worked with in the past, but also paying it forward to those we hope to work with in the future. To date, we have run over 700 events for engineers, developers, students, graduates, CTOs, the list goes on. We have run conferences, lightning talks, hackathons, all sorts. In January of this year, we made our 4,000th introduction through our Meet a Mentor program, and we're super excited to see where that's going to go next as well. As I've already said, we love to give opportunities for people to connect, and this event is part of that. If you would like to know about any of our other communities, please do get in touch with myself or Barry or Helen Lewis, and we will be able to take it from there. Today's session will be recorded and it will be available on YouTube. I will put the link in the chat shortly, or likewise you can message me on LinkedIn and I'll ping it over to you when it's ready. So with no further ado, let me introduce our first speaker, Benga, who is going to speak to us about how I think like a mid-developer as a junior. Over to you, Benga.
Thank you, Abby. Let me share my screen. Okay. Hello, as Abby said, I'm Benga, and I am a front-end developer at ISS Liquid Metrix. They provide transactional cost analysis, best execution, and surveillance analysis for investment houses. So helps the managers to decide on the best execution for their portfolios. So my talk today is titled Be Your Future Self Today. So I'm currently in my first role as a front-end developer with this company. And this first 6 months for me has been very interesting. I'll be starting off with my early mistakes and how I sort of had to quickly adjust. And, you know, based on a conversation I had with Barry, for example, I remember my first conversation with Barry, he said, okay, Benga, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a developer, obviously. Okay, what about the future? I want to lead my own team potentially. Okay, what industry do you want to work in? And then he said to me, why are you not conveying yourself to people now as those things? So yeah, this talk will also include things of that. So just about me, I'm a bootcamp grad. So I finished General Assembly in 2020. I learned everything full stack development, mainly JavaScript and Node. And in 2021, I was a teaching assistant for another bootcamp called Brain Station. I was helping with mentoring their students, doing teaching as well, a bit of teaching on the side. And I'm passionate about football, Arsenal follower, and I knew that would make you happy, Barry. And I like my golf. It's not a very tech thing, but yeah, I learned that one from financial services and growing up. So as I said, I'll be talking about my early mistakes I made when I first started my current role. So the first one is I'd wait around for other developers to make themselves available for myself. And walk me through the code base or task that was set. And, you know, this is something I wanted to bring up because hearing about what it was like getting your first role in the industry, everyone said, oh yeah, it took me a month to adjust. It was easy. Yeah, you just they'll walk you through. They don't expect you to understand a huge code base. Everything will be done for you. Just sit there and you'll be spoon fed, right? So that was an early mistake I made. I'd go to stand-ups ill prepared. I had no plan, nothing to talk about. You say when it's nothing to talk about, sorry. And, my first impression of the code base was, it's a legacy code base. This is wrong, or the setup is not for me. I have to look for a new job because my favorite YouTubers were talking about the latest version of React, the latest version of whatever language it is, right? Oh, this is old. You can't do things. Don't do this anymore, right? And another thing is my communication skills, which is why I really wanted to do this talk as well. And it's a skill for me that I figured out early that was important to be a really good developer. Because when people say, how do you become a good developer? Everyone just throws, you need to know this language, you need to know how to code this. But I think communication skills, from what I've now noticed anyway, is probably one of the most important skills you can have as a developer. So the Benjamin Franklin quote, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So as I said, I'd go into stand-up without a plan. I had nothing to talk about. I just clearly showed that I had no clue what was going on half of the time, right? So how did I try to solve those problems? I started to figure out, look, I need to build trust with these guys. I need them to understand why they're investing in me. So I started to do my own research and taking my own initiative to sort of approach the tasks at hand, go through the code base on my own, ask questions if needed. So rather than sit around and wait for, the senior guys to be available for me, why not just go through the code base, show them. I can see you laughing there, Nikita. So rather than, let them make time for me, why don't I go through the code base, show them I'm interested, make myself look very enthusiastic. I want to learn, I want to develop and grow, right? I want to improve. I no longer want to be seen as a junior developer and be spoon-fed. Go through on my own, prepare myself with good questions to ask them, so that way they take me more seriously. It makes the conversation interesting and they genuinely want to give me my time. My use of Google, right? I saw a thing on LinkedIn recently where someone said they literally handed over a job to a candidate because they said, I'm really good at Googling. So this is another skill I took too lightly, I'd say. So am I asking the right questions from Google in order to solve my problems? Am I referring to the documentation before even going to meet the senior guy and saying, I don't know how to use whatever third-party program you've asked me to use? Can you solve this problem for me? And then am I going back when I'm in stand-up? Am I going back to read through the tasks and issues that the other developers have talked about and discussed in a stand-up? Am I going through their PRs to help me understand the code base rather than being walked through the code base by someone else and, taking away valuable resources from the team? So this is one of the first things I noticed. I want to be a better developer than I am. I don't want these guys to see me as a junior. Can I take this approach? And that's really helped me to date. So yeah. Like, as I said, trust is gained, right? How do I gain their trust? I'm going to find a problem that needs to be solved. I'm going to go through the backlog and approach one of the senior guys. This has been there for months now. Can I tackle this and solve it? So doing this actually helps me a lot because I approached one of the senior developers and said, look, this has been there for a while. Can I tackle this? Do you mind if I actually have a go at this? And he said, yes. Upon doing it, I think he was quite shocked. And, I could see that they started to trust me more and they gave me a project to work on my own, which is quite a big project in terms of, you know, adding a big feature to the product that we have at the moment, which is adding a commentary feature, a workflow feature. So building in Jira into the trading app that we have at the moment. So yeah, that was quite good for me to work on in my first 6 months of this company. And then back to the legacy code issue, right? This is something that really almost put me off at the start, because I always had this imagination and this, I envisioned my first role would be, oh, I'm working with the latest version of React. Like I said, right? Because all the YouTubers are talking about it. This is what all the fintech companies are talking about on LinkedIn, you know. Why am I here? I thought to myself, why am I here? It really put me off. I didn't, you know, it made me very pessimistic about the whole situation, and I wanted to give up early on. But then, you know, I sort of sat back and thought, I need to be the change I want to see, right? The opportunities for me here to sort of prove myself. And once again, don't see yourself as your junior. So yeah, in terms of approaching the legacy code base, things I look out for is, are there opportunities there for me to improve this code? Can I make it more readable and understandable for other people? Because that's one thing I struggled with initially, right? I'm reading code, I'm like, whoa, I don't have a clue what's going on here. And then you find out, oh, this guy was a super React expert. That's why he wrote it this way. Okay, can we make things more readable and understandable for people that come in the future? Can I make it reusable? So building libraries where I can. So that's another approach I like to take here and there. Feedback, breakfast of champions. So in terms of feedback, right? I'm creating PRs. I'm going to get feedback. Oh, we need to do this way. Can I own my feelings? Sometimes it's, you know, they can be very subjective. I think you should do this way because this is how I approach things. However, I might not like it, but I'm trying to learn here and improve. So I will sort of work on it. These guys have been in the game longer than I have. Can I listen and ask questions where needed rather than challenge the person giving me the feedback? And once again, it's important for me to understand these things as they come along, for me to be able to add value to the team and the product and see how they work. Communication, as I said, this is one skill that I picked out early on for me personally, if I wanted to become a really good developer, right? Because when I was doing my job search, I'd passed the coding test, but then I would never get the job. And I thought, what could be going on here? And I figured, you know, when they asked me questions, I didn't necessarily convey them properly. When I was talking about my code, it wasn't concise, it wasn't very descriptive. Like, I was just all over the place. And I thought to myself, hey, how can I improve here? How can I talk in their own language, right? How can I talk to other developers, whether stand-up or whether it is in a language that they understand? I need to adapt quickly. Can I make myself accountable? Am I listening to the issues at hand here? Am I enthusiastic? Do I sound like I want to be there, or I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing? So yeah, this for me is very, I'd say very undervalued, right? When people are describing what it takes to be a good developer to people like myself who are new to the industry or just juniors in general. So yeah, this is it. This is my talk. This is me trying to be my future self, hopefully leading a team of my own in the future. So thanks for your time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Benga. That was great. Really interesting. You're definitely right. Communication is key. Like, that's one of the biggest factors, I think, for all of us. I think we should get you doing a longer talk next time, Benga. Yeah. Are you up for that? Are you up for the challenge? We can look at getting a longer talk from you. Excellent.
Yeah, I thought that was great as well. Really enjoyed that, Benga. I think so many things there that it takes people a frustratingly long time to realize in their careers. So I could see a lot of people sort of like, yes, this kind of on a lot of things that you were saying. Communication skills is just lost for, it takes so many people so long before they start sinking in. So yeah, really good lessons, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing.
There's definitely a conference talk in there. Sorry, I just want to second Benga. There is a conference talk in there, in you, just straight out from everything you just said there. So yeah, that was really good and so true.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. So next up for you, everybody, we have the lovely Barry Cranford, founder of the LJC and my boss. So I have to be nice about him. It's fine. He's great anyway. His talk is entitled 3 Reasons I Would Recommend Giving a Lightning Talk. Over to you, Barry.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Abby. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so as Abby says, my talk today is 3 reasons why I would recommend giving a lightning talk. So again, as Abby said, I'm Barry Cranford. I'm the founder of the London Java community and also a group called the Aspiring Speakers, which is all about trying to encourage people to do just that, to start speaking. So this talk is aimed primarily at software engineers that are looking to step up in their career. Probably parts of this will be relevant to a lot of people, but that's specifically who I'm looking to target. So I'll go straight in then. My first reason is that if you start speaking, you absolutely will get recognition, both from inside your company as well as outside your company. You'll see it's just something that elevates you above other people that are doing a similar thing as you are. And that's purely because so few people actually do it. Like if you think about how many people on your teams actually go out and speak at conferences and that kind of thing, unless you're one of the lucky ones and one of very few companies, most people just don't. And so you just by doing it, elevate yourself above others. So we saw this really obviously with a particular software engineer that I remember. He came through the software, the Aspiring Speakers, started speaking, gave a lightning talk, and we started seeing on the signups, wow, you got 4 or 5 people from this single company at quite a senior level. And we realized that he'd mentioned it internally and they'd all shown up to support him. And you're like, oh, wow, you could sort of see it. And then a few months later, sure enough, he was promoted within the company. And it's this kind of thing. We see this sort of thing all the time. People that start speaking then get promotions, or indeed headhunted from external companies. So there's a lady that we interviewed called Maria Gutierrez. She's now at Twitter, and she was an engineering director when I interviewed her as part of one of our groups. And she said she tries to speak maybe once, maybe twice a year, but every single time she speaks, she will find that she'll be approached afterwards, like headhunted afterwards. People will write to her. So no matter what you do, you will get recognition and you will get other people noticing you. So that's number 1. Number 2, and this is my favorite one, is you'll meet other people who share your interest or who have similar interests as you. So no matter what you're interested in, whether it's TDD or Scala or like Benga, the latest versions of React, or no matter what it is, if you find a subject that you genuinely are interested in and you start speaking about it, people will find you afterwards and they'll say, oh, me too. And it will happen no matter what you do. So we first had this confirmed, or first started thinking about speaking in this way at a LJC unconference. Many of you might have heard of Daniel Bryant or Abraham Mariam Perez, but they were giving a presentation on why you should speak. And I asked at the end, why would you recommend other people speak? And that was what they said. They said, look, they found each other because they started speaking, and their life was just better because they're like kindred spirits. And that's, again, it's just what happens. You'll find people that will connect you and share your interests, and just life just gets better when you have more of these kindred spirits in your life and in your career. So personally, I met Sandra Mancuso because I got quite vocal about mentoring, Martin Verberg because we were quite heavy into community, and so many other people. And your life just changes for the better when you meet these people. So that's number 2. Number 3 is it helps you consolidate your learning or consolidate learning about a particular subject. So there's no better way that you can show you know something than teaching somebody else about it. And it really just helps you to bring it all together and kind of make a nice, concise explanation of everything. So the guy that I learned that from was a guy called John Stevenson. He's the one of the organisers of the London Clogerians and has done loads of conference talks. And he's got this Kanban board that he was taking me through, where every time that he learns anything, he kind of goes through this process, and the final process is give a short talk on it or give a talk on it. And so for everything that he does, like once a quarter, he'll learn something else, and by the end, he'll give a talk on it. They might not be the best talks and he sort of said, it might not be the best talks, but they're a talk, and it means that I've learned something to a point where I can explain it to other people. So yeah, there you go. They're my 3 key reasons for why I'd recommend everyone gives a talk. Again, just going through them. The first one, you will get recognition. You will get appreciated both internally and externally. The second one, you will meet others who share your interests, other kindred spirits. And finally, it will help you consolidate your learning on a particular subject. So just as a final note, if anybody hasn't spoken, I think I'm looking at everyone, I'm thinking most people probably have, but if anybody out there hasn't spoken, is even mildly curious about it, then I'm giving a workshop on Thursday, which is around how to write a talk from scratch. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, I've got nothing to talk about, the whole point of this is how to write a talk from scratch in 15 minutes. So that's this Thursday. If anyone's interested, then I'd love to see you there. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Barry. I thought it was Wednesday, but I'll
might be Wednesday. Listen to
No,
Abby,
you're right.
it
is. It's next Thursday, the 26th at 1 o'clock.
All
I had the day wrong. It's okay. It's good when I know when things are happening, isn't it?
Well, as long as one of us does, Abs, then
yeah, that's it. Between us, we get there, don't we, Barry? Exactly. Absolutely. Thanks very much for taking my slapdash approach today, everybody. I very much appreciate it. Next up, we have Nick. He is going to speak to us about gamifying estimations, which I don't know what that means, but I'm hoping he'll explain. So over to you, Nick.
Yeah, I don't like writing simple titles. That would be too easy, wouldn't it? And just off Barry's talk as well, I just wanted to say that a lot of that resonates with me. I've got a wife who's not remotely interested in software development, so these talks allow me to get this stuff out that I love talking about. So rather than boring her, but yeah, I'm going to talk about a different way of potentially planning sprints through what we call estimation poker. So I'll just share my screen. Can everyone see that? All good? Cool. Okay, so just a little bit about me. My name's Nick. I'm the head of software development at a company called Nexbotics. We're an RPA shop. We do a lot of process automation. So I'm responsible for our development team and our general tech stack and our roadmap. My background is largely in .NET, so as a C# developer, and I specialize in robotic process automation. I also create content on YouTube and blog at my website, where I talk a lot about these different types of things, but specifically I like to talk about C#. I do love this language, always a little bit controversial at London Java community, I guess. But no, I know all programming languages welcome, of course. So yeah, feel free to get in touch with me at any time. I'm really keen to do more things like this and to chat to fellow developers. So the problems with sprint estimation. So we've probably all been there as a developer. We've got an upcoming sprint and we've got loads of things in the backlog and we need to decide what's going to go in there. But then even then, once we've decided that, how long are these things going to take? And it's a constant thing that I get from people in the leadership team at my business, which is, when's this going to be done? How long is that going to take? And it's the dreaded question. Now, what I've done is I've sort of summed up the various problems that I find with the traditional estimation of things. And I find firstly that it puts a lot of people in a room that have varying levels of experience and confidence. And I guess if you do that, what do you get? You certainly don't get the truth, or you don't get what people are really thinking. There may be people who are not confident to speak up, may feel like they're stepping on someone's toes. And so what we want to do is try and make everyone equal and make it so that everyone feels like they're able to contribute. There's a heavy focus on timelines. So again, back to that question of when am I going to get my new feature? It's all about, you know, the date of completion. And these timeline estimations are really difficult if you don't have any historical data. So if you don't know how long something similar took you before, it's really hard to say, oh, it's going to take 2 days, it's going to take 3 days, etc. And then also what I found in more sort of straightforward estimation sessions is that we don't often talk about edge cases. So it might be that we just say, oh, you've got to do this, it'll take a day. But someone else might have thought, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this button's clicked? All that sort of stuff. What if someone's an absolute maniac and clicks something over and over again? So that's one of the things that's also missing, is that some people might not feel like they can say, what if? So what's the ideal environment for estimating things that go into a sprint? Well, for me, I like to feel like everyone has a voice. And that means that regardless of whether you're going to be the person who works on that specific feature or bug fix, that you feel like you're able to shout up and say, I think this might require X, Y, and Z. Shift the focus away from experience levels. So again, talking about that ability to make everything sort of flat. So if you've got a room full of senior developers and one junior, you want to make it so that that junior is able to speak. You know, Benga was talking about being proactive and not feeling like he has to wait until a senior developer says something. You know, hopefully this approach that I'm going to talk about shortly will make those junior developers more eager to speak up. Again, talking about the edge cases, so people who are less involved with a specific item, this idea of an outside eye or more objectivity. So I'm even trying to involve non-developers who are more based on product in this estimation process, largely because they will think of things as a non-developer. They're more likely to think of things as a user that we may miss as developers, which leads to removing bias. So, you know, you don't just take the person who always writes these kinds of features and say, oh, well, I know exactly what it needs. And the peer pressure as well that comes with, you know, if everyone's saying, oh, that's dead easy, then everyone else will feel pressured to agree. And that's not really an ideal situation. But probably most importantly, the overall estimate that comes out, an ideal result is that the estimate is a reflection of the level of effort rather than the time to build. So to me, it is more of a focus on how complex is each item that we're working on. So that's the ideal environment that I feel we want to work towards. So to kick this off then, we bring in the concept of story points, which is probably something that several developers in this call have heard of before. They may have used them, they may have not used them. But overall, a story point is a representation of effort to make a story come true. So we have each feature as a user story, and we say once X, Y, and Z is complete, then that story has come true, which shifts the focus away from time and says, let's look at the effort that we need to put in. And then from that, the complexity of the development is highlighted, and it may raise other questions that we wouldn't have considered before. So we're less likely to estimate insufficient time to something that actually turned out to be way more complex than we thought. It stops people from just saying, I'm going to pluck a time out of the air and just assign it to it. And it also applies this concept of a ceiling, so that if you think something is actually really, really complex, you may actually need to split it up into multiple items. So many times in the past, somebody's submitted a work item as a user story, but it should have been 5 user stories. And then we didn't make the deadline because it was too big. And there are a variety of formats for story points. So story points are essentially numbers which reflect effort. So they can be a consecutive sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 being the most effort, or it could be something like a Fibonacci sequence, which is usually what we use. So how do we use these story points to reach that ideal scenario of a world where everyone feels comfortable estimating things together? That's where story point poker comes in. So instead of asking a blanket question in a room of how complex is this going to be, how much effort is this going to take, and then just waiting for someone to put their hand up and say, I think, each attendee has a hand of cards. and they represent a number of story points. And there are 2 wildcards in that as well. So there's the question mark, which means I have no idea. And it kind of encourages people to say, I don't know, which is a really important thing for people to be able to say and feel comfortable to say. And the coffee cup, which is one of my favorites, which is, we need to talk about this over a cup of coffee. We need to have another session on this to say, it's a bit more complicated than we think. So those are the 2 wildcards. So each item in the sprint that's proposed is outlined to clarify the user story and any other technical considerations, and no estimate is made at that point. So it could be that you're saying, we need an export button so that all the data on the page goes to CSV. That's the item. So then you'll knock about some ideas. Oh, we've got to think about X, Y, and Z. Have we thought about this? And then eventually, when you get to that discussion being complete, each person secretly takes a card from their hand, places it face down, and that card is their estimate of the story point. So at no point do they know what people are going to put down. It can be anonymous if you want it to be, doesn't have to be, but essentially this is your poker river. So if you guys play poker, this is where the cards go down on the table face down, ready to be revealed. And then ultimately, once everyone's put down their estimate face down, they're all flipped. So either you know what people have selected, or you just have a bunch of estimates on the table. So then the idea is, following this, you say, okay, we've got some estimates which look the same, but so most people have said it's a 4, but oh my God, Jeff has said it's 20. What's going on? Like, have we not thought of something? Or has Jeff maybe misunderstood? Then we can start clarifying why someone thought it was more complex. And so it takes away a lot of this bias. It makes it safer for people to say what they actually think. So how do you play this remotely is the big question. So I work in a fully remote business, and you know, shock horror, there are technological solutions to this. So we use a plugin in DevOps called Estimation Poker, but there are lots of other apps that do the same sort of thing. So what we do is we set up a session, and this just creates like a mini server that people can join, and it automatically pulls in the items for the sprint that are proposed, and we just work through them. And so this is what I would see on my screen. We discuss the user story, and then when we're ready, I pick an item from my deck of cards. So either a number based on complexity, or I've got no idea, or let's talk about this in another session. And then when everyone's voted, so I'd see everyone's votes coming up, we reveal them, have another discussion, and then when we've all agreed on a final value, enter it, click save, and that item has been given some story points. So what we end up with then is a sprint with an overall total of story points. And you know sort of roughly how much effort that sprint's going to take. So for me, this supports more of an agile attitude of learning as you go, which for me is really important. You know, when we're estimating, I want to do it based on past experience. So your retrospectives are able to show you how many story points you were able to achieve last time, whether it was realistic, and whether next time you maybe need to cut that down. And so ultimately your estimates should become more accurate over time. And then the biggest thing for me is that the whole team feels involved. So even if you're not working on a particular feature, you feel like you've contributed, and no one's going to sort of scoff at you or think, you know, or you actually felt like you were able to speak up. And then another thing as well, obviously, is when we're talking about complexities that probably would have gone unnoticed if we just said to the developer who is probably going to work on the item what's involved, those would be able to come to the surface because there are edge cases there that we found by involving everybody. That's pretty much it from me. It's a fun game, and it's often a bit of a laugh as well, but very, very productive.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like the sort of thing that actually is really helpful because it lets people voice concerns without being that person.
Exactly.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Nick.
Pleasure.
Excellent. So last but by no means least, we have Tabitha today, who's speaking about the importance of failure in the workplace. Did I say your name right? Yes, I got your name right. Thank you.
You did.
I like to make sure I do get them right. So yeah, brilliant. Over to you, Tabitha.
I'm going to share my screen, but Abby, please tell me whether you can see my screen notes, because I don't really want everybody to see them, do I?
I can at the moment.
Okay, let me just stop that a second. Sorry, and let me read it again.
That's okay.
Thank you. Right, what can you see?
So I can see your window with your screen, with your presentation in, and your text is underneath.
Okay, can you see?
No, not now.
Now you can see it. I'm good?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Okay, that's good enough for me. That'll work. So hi, thanks very much for having me today. My name is Tabitha Wilson. I'm a business unit director at Conversational Health, which is a AI company that manufactures virtual assistants for the pharma industry. I've been working there for 1.5 years today, and I'm been invited by yourselves to try and improve my speaking techniques and presentation, because I'd like to provide more information with regards to what I do at conferences, software conferences especially. So thank you very much for inviting me here today. The title of our presentation is The Importance of Failure Within the Workplace. Now, I chose this title because it's very pertinent to myself. I've had many a failure within the workplace, but more importantly, there was a bit of a issue or disaster with regards to one of my team, junior member of my teams, who basically messed up quite big within a project, and just wanted to kind of take insights and learnings of how she managed it, how she approached it, and my advice to her to kind of make sure that power failing in the workplace isn't a bad thing. It's actually a learning, and how you can only be empowered and strive to improve further on within your career as you learn from those mistakes. So my next slide. So essentially, what is failure? The Oxford Dictionary says it's the neglect or omission of an expected or a required action. Essentially, there isn't a person on this planet who hasn't failed at something, and it's actually a vital, inevitable part of growing up. It's part of living, and anybody who says that they haven't failed have been essentially liars. I'd like to just kind of outline that there are eventually those people who eventually succeeded and have become famous because of their failure, and there are so many people, and I'm sure that you can probably count 5, 6, 7, 8 on both hands. The ones that I kind of gravitate towards are Sir James Dyson, who essentially had 5,000 goes of patents of his Dyson Hoover before he found his final approved model. There was Lady Gaga, who was dropped by Def Jam right before she got big, and was dropped 3 months into a contract, and then was taken up by Interscope Records, and look how badly that turned out for her. And then essentially there was Oprah Winfrey, who was dropped from a co-anchor position on a TV station. I was told that she wasn't necessarily suitable for TV. Now look at her, she's an absolute media giant. For myself, I can't count the amount of times I have failed, include my travails as being a personal trainer, tried to do horse riding, that was a disaster, being a ballerina, also a disaster. Essentially my list is long enough for me to kind of not entertain you with, but essentially I've had my fair share of failures. So essentially, failure at work, what is it? We all know what it is. It's happened to all of us. It's ideally maybe when a project just goes horribly, disastrously wrong. And I can tell you one example for myself. I was managing within the middle of a pandemic, and a client wanted a live webcast when I'd actually insisted not to do that, do a pre-recorded one, because internet was janky, and I just wanted to minimize any opportunity for something to go wrong. What happened? Well, of course, every single mishap that could have gone wrong did go wrong. The audience couldn't access the cast, the Vimeo hosting platform died, the client's or the presenter's Wi-Fi dropped. So essentially he was presenting to nobody. It was it was ugly. And I remember thinking, this is an absolute disaster. And it was. I had a very angry client, and I was very kind of angry with myself. That's just one of them of many that I don't really wish to kind of entertain you with, but that's one that went really, really horribly wrong. And also with regards to one of my junior members of the team this week, I've just come back from a conference in Dubrovnik, and she had forgotten or omitted to courier over a vital piece of conference material that I didn't have available for me to use at conference. For an example, it's happened to all of us. If it isn't a project that goes wrong, another example is that you don't present your best self, and you know you've kind of not done as well as you possibly could. What's the essential outcome of this failure at work? You don't feel great, you feel disappointed, and essentially you feel a massive loss of confidence. And then you're also worried in the workplace, especially, that there is a potential negative or low opinion from your peers, definitely within yourself, in terms of not managing your highest expectations of yourself. But what I want to basically say is that it's not a failure, it's a lesson. And I think that this is what I was trying to tell my junior colleague when she was in tears for not delivering this particular item that I needed at conference. Not getting the result that you want the first time is only and can only be seen as an opportunity to find another way to a successful outcome. There is this famous saying that my mum always says, God loves a trier. And what my dad always used to say is, if you don't succeed the first time, try and try again. The biggest scheme of things is that there's only learning. So in terms of what did I learn from how that webcast went disastrously wrong when I was conducting it 2 years ago, it improved my critical thinking. So how could I have done things differently? It would have improved my problem solving. So anticipation of what could have happened for the next time. It made me a hell of a lot more resilient in terms of, okay, so that didn't work. I told them not to do a live webcast. You didn't listen to me. Next time I'll be more stubborn and determined that you will listen to me, so I can make sure that this doesn't happen.
The internet is gone. So, yeah, let's go to the presentation.
All you'll do is learn to do something differently, better. You'll learn to maybe anticipate the courier times. You'll learn to make sure that you do things ahead of time. But you've not failed. You've just learned how to share with her. And as I went on to say that in terms of learning at work, the only way to learn at work is to get things wrong, and that failing or learning at work is in the workplace is inevitable, and it's the best place to learn. And I know that it's something that's actively encouraged in these tech companies, Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA. In our companies at Conversation Health, me as a team member, I actively encourage my team to, for want of a better phrase, cock up. And I encourage them to kind of make mistakes, to learn so that they can learn differently, learn faster and learn better. I said, the process of learning is never linear, it's never A to B. And I want those people within my team to know that not getting it right the first time is just a learning to get it right a next time. And it's the quickest way to a successful outcome if you keep going at it. So as I kind of wrap up, I know I only have 8 minutes. This is what I kind of, the advice that I keep for myself in all the times that I've messed up, and the same toolkit with which I gave the advice to my younger member of the team. I call it my toolkit. So true failure is actually just not trying at all. If you keep trying new and different ways, you can never call yourself a failure. So like I said, I've done many clangers within my professional life, and most of the lessons I've kind of been able to consolidate into a quick toolkit, which I call my trusty Tabitha toolkit. If you're going to fail fast, do it quickly, then move on. If you see that it's going wrong, ask for help, especially from your work colleagues or your line manager. They're more than likely to kind of help you, provide hints and tips and give you a good steer. Feedback, priceless stuff. An outside perspective from a colleague or a work member can help give you valuable advice that you would have never known beforehand. If my junior member of colleague told me that, Tabitha, this isn't going to come by this time, then I would have been able to kind of print it on site, but she didn't. She waited until I was on site and then realized that it wasn't delivered. There my feedback to her is just essentially timeliness. But that feedback in and of itself is what she'll take away. An application, use the learnings that you've helped so that you can next time do things differently. Otherwise, you'll keep falling over again. What's the outcome of this? You're one step closer to a positive result. So the next time I did a webcast, and I deliberately put myself forward for a webcast, was all the things that I did do in the last one, I didn't do this the second time. It was pre-recorded. We used a LAN connection rather than a Wi-Fi, and it went very, very smoothly. The advice that I gave to my junior member of staff was essentially timeliness is everything, and let's see how we can kind of have a better plan so that that doesn't happen again when I'm next on site. What did that do for me in terms of the second webcast that went well? It gave me great self-confidence, and I hope that I instilled in my junior member of staff that she didn't fail, that she just learned to do something differently the next time around. And I think that in me not shouting at her and remonstrating with her allowed her to kind of have some self-confidence within herself, self-respect within herself, and I have much more self-respect for her in terms of her confidence and how she's going to manage the next issue that is going to inevitably face her. So it's short and sweet. They're just my findings. I've overrun massively. I'm sorry about that, but I'd like to say thank you for giving me the time to kind of show you my pearls of wisdom of how to kind of fail fast and how my toolkit keeps me going and keeps me positive and resilient within my job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tabitha. That was great. Some really useful, helpful things in there that you probably saw or maybe didn't see. There were lots of things coming up in the chat saying, yes, I agree, that's so good, that's really helpful. Exactly what I would say as well. So
thank you.
Thank you so much to everybody who has spoken to us today. So thank you, Benga and Nick, Barry and Tabitha. You all did a great job, and all your talks were really interesting. I'm so looking forward to being able to watch them back again. And thank you everybody else for joining us this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed the talks as well. It's been really great to see you all, and we look forward to seeing you at our next lightning talks or at the workshop next Thursday. Ping me a message if you want to come to the workshop, and we'll get the invite out to you so that you can write your own lightning talks in very little time.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone. Thanks, Abby, as well.
Thank you. Bye bye.
I think the junior member will really appreciate you, by the way.
Oh,
Best thing you could.
I
Honestly,
hope so.
One of the best things my current manager did was tell me about his failures when he was a junior. Oh, he broke the code base, and that really relaxed me a lot in terms of. So yeah, they'll really appreciate you.
Thank you, Benga. I appreciate that. That's wonderful feedback. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Thanks so much, guys. Have a great afternoon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.